$25 billion worth of Venezuela's gold and oil is currently frozen. Not in Venezuela, but in 3 different cities around the world that have nothing to do with Venezuela, and no one, not even the President of the United States, can touch it. From January until now, the United States has sold $13 billion worth of Venezuelan oil. There is also an official ledger in Caracas that is supposed to show where this money has gone. That ledger only mentions $300 million. So out of the $13 billion worth of oil that was sold, only $300 million has returned to Venezuela. $12.7 billion have disappeared. Now let me tell you about a similar incident from 2 decades ago. In 2003, after the fall of Saddam Hussein, the United States took control of Iraq's oil. The exact same issue came up there as well. Where should the oil money go? The United Nations created a fund called the Iraq Development Fund, and it was supposed to be independently supervised. But 5 years later, inspectors' reports showed that nearly $18 billion from this fund had been spent without proper documentation. Do you see the pattern? Whenever a wealthy country becomes unstable and stateless, a bigger power says, "I'll hold it for you." And then that money disappears into the fog. Venezuela is Iraq version 2, only this time instead of Baghdad, the plan is being carried out in Caracas. But this time there's a new complication that didn't exist in Iraq. That $300 million that was recorded didn't go directly to the US either. It went to Qatar, to a bank in Doha. So why does the US take the oil money of a South American country to Qatar? Here I need to explain a legal mechanism to you that very few people know about. But this very law determines the whole game. Within the United States, there is a federal law that dictates if a foreign government has provided support for acts of international terrorism, the victims of that terrorism can seize that government's assets, even if those assets are held through a state-owned company. US courts have previously ruled that Venezuela's state oil company is classified as falling directly into this specific legal category because of its documented ties to Colombian armed groups. This means that any single dollar that enters an American bank can be subject to immediate seizure and confiscation by lawyers representing victims of terrorism. To prevent the money from slipping out of its own hands, the US has been forced to move the funds somewhere its own laws simply cannot reach. In other words, the US government is evading its own laws in order to control this money. Now let's move on to the second part of this story, which is even stranger than the first. There's a large refinery in the US called Citgo. It has nearly 4,000 gas stations and refineries that process more than 800,000 barrels of oil every day. This 113-year-old refinery belongs to Venezuela's state oil company, Venezuela's most valuable asset outside its own borders. In 2016, a Canadian mining company obtained a ruling from a US court stating that Venezuela had expropriated its mine without compensation. The problem was that Venezuela didn't have the money to pay. So that company went after the assets of Venezuela's oil company in the United States. According to the law, this shouldn't be possible because the company is legally separate from its government. But a court saw that the Venezuelan government had been directly giving orders to this oil company for years and appointing its managers. In other words, the line between the government and the company didn't exist at all. So the court ruled that the assets of this oil company are essentially government assets. This single ruling opened the door for 100 other creditors who were waiting in line. An 8-year-long auction began. An American investment fund called Elliott Management successfully won the refinery for a total of nearly $6 billion. The result is that Venezuela's most valuable industrial asset now belongs to an American fund, instead of the nation of Venezuela. And the third part, which is the strangest of all. Deep under the Bank of England, there are 31 tons of Venezuela's gold that have been securely locked away in the vault since 2018 and are now worth more than a staggering $4 billion. Why? Because an old law in English law says that the courts themselves do not decide which government is official. They leave this decision to the Foreign Office. In 2019, the UK recognized an opposition leader as the interim president of Venezuela. He appointed a new board for the Central Bank of Venezuela. A few years later, those same internal opposition members dissolved his interim government. The UK no longer recognizes him. But the court has said that since he was official at the time he appointed this board, the appointment is still valid. As a result, now no entity, neither Maduro's government nor the former interim government, has the legal right to claim that gold. The gold belongs to Venezuela, but not a single Venezuelan citizen can access it. Now let me share my prediction, which you'll probably hear right here for the first time. This pattern is going to become a standard path for any country that the US or the West has political issues with. Right now, nearly $300 billion of Russian assets are frozen in Europe and the US. The Venezuela model has taught them that when you destabilize a country politically, you no longer need to confiscate its assets. All you have to do is claim it's unclear who the official representative is and lock up their assets in the judicial systems of several different countries. This is much cleaner than a military occupation. No soldiers die, no newspaper headlines of war, but the result is the same. Controlling a country's resources without officially admitting you're controlling them. And right at this moment, Venezuela is grappling with a truly major disaster. Last month, 2 massive earthquakes caused thousands of deaths. Tens of thousands of people left homeless, and nearly $37 billion in damages, which is roughly equivalent to 1/3 of Venezuela's entire economy. The United Nations has requested $300 million for immediate aid, but not even half of that has been raised yet. At that very moment, just the gold held under the Bank of England was worth more than $4 billion. That is money that could have solved the entire humanitarian crisis in that country. This story is no longer just about Venezuela. It is about the fact that a country's ownership of its natural resources is only truly real as long as the rest of the world recognizes someone as legitimate enough to hand the money over to. When that certainty disappears, ownership turns into a legal question, and legal questions are answered by judges and creditors, not by the people of that country. What do you think? Do you think this pattern is going to repeat for other countries as well? Write your opinion for me. If you found this video valuable, like it, subscribe to our channel, and send it to that one person you think should see this video.